Good morning, church. Yesterday, April the 28th. Today is the 29th, Monday morning. In church yesterday, we talked about Jesus meeting the Centurion. And the key moving forward for the next few months is this paragraph from Jeremiah. And we're going to look at more than just the one sentence in Jeremiah 29 up through 31, maybe even into 33. Where the 29 passage, 29:11, says that God has a plan, and God's plan for our life is to bless us and to help us to prosper. And what we're going to look at is the plan for hope and a future. And so I presented to you that the meeting with the centurion is a deliberate act that Jesus literally walks into Capernaum for the intention of providing an illustration of what he just taught in the Sermon on the Plain in Luke chapter 6. And in chapter 7, we meet the centurion. We don't actually meet him in Luke. We meet the people who speak on his behalf. And those are servants and leaders of the Jewish community. And I presented that what Jesus is doing is showing us, and he will continue to do this in Luke, that there are two kinds of people in the world. There are those who understand their depravity and their unholiness in the presence of a holy God, and so they willingly call themselves sinners who need a Savior. Those end up being the Jesus people who understand that Jesus came to fix that problem and to resolve the chasm that exists between a sinful people and a holy God, and build a bridge for us to have a relationship with a God who loves and cares for us. And then there are the people who don't believe that they're sinful, who believe that they can fix the issues of the world from their own mind and their own will and their own decisions. And they can do this without God. And so with that in mind, that becomes a battle. I call it a war, a battleground. And we are definitely in a battle because I suggest that nearly every single person that we know, including most people in our own family and many, many, many people in the church, we've lost sight of the reality that we're sinful people. And so now right and wrong has become relative according to what my personal belief system is or my personal preferences are. So long as it's not offensive to me, it must be okay. And we've lost the idea that truth and what's right is outside of us, and it is given to us for us to live out, and that our true purpose can't be met until we live in accordance with the boundaries of spiritual life that God has given to us. And that battle it's not a political battle, it's a spiritual battle. It's a battle against spiritual forces. And most of the people that we know, they wouldn't even say this because they consider themselves good people. But if we as a people, if I haven't gotten to where I recognize that I need Jesus, then I'm on the wrong side. I'm not going to win. It's inevitable that I will lose, and my depravity will eventually rear its head, either as an individual or as a collective society. We cannot govern this world without God. It's not going to happen. And we've proven this over and over and over again. And I can't find a society that actually did govern using God. There's many that tried and perhaps even began that way, but they all, as society grows older, they all grow away from the principles upon which they were founded, even here in our country. And so here in this story, the story of the centurion, we have this understanding and this differentiation between a group of people, and they happen to be leaders of the Jews, who say that the centurion deserves Jesus to help them because he loves their nation and he built a synagogue. And that's how the world thinks, is that if I do good things like that, I deserve God's favor. And I think you'll find that pretty consistent, even in spiritual people who believe in God. That even me sometimes, that's how I feel. It's very unfair when life is unfair. I get it, and I truly do understand it. And that's what makes the war so serious and so close to home. And and then the servant himself, the centurion himself says, no, I don't deserve you to come into my life, Jesus. I haven't earned that. And that is the attitude that we, the true church, that's the attitude that we should have. We don't deserve the favor of God. We haven't earned it. He has simply decided to give it. And this is fundamentally the gospel here in this story. And there are two kinds of people. And you know what? The Jewish people, they're not bad people. They're not. These are decent people. But they have misunderstood their own nature in the presence of a holy God. And that's the battle. That's the fundamental battle. People believe that they are basically good. And I think there is a lot of good in most people. It's just that we're not all good. And there is within us this seed of selfishness and bitterness and disappointment and frustration and unhappiness. It envelopes us. And we can battle it in our own will and in our own strength, and we can do good things. But apart from Jesus, those things end up being kind of meaningless because we lack the foundation. I gave the example of being at the zoo, pushing Brenda around in a wheelchair, and people literally stepping over her and in front of her to get to where they wanted to go see the gibbons. And they're in a hurry. And I asked everybody, is it right? Do you believe that it's right for someone to step in front of Brenda, over her, in order to get to where they want to go? And universally, everybody says, no, that's wrong. Well, why is it wrong? Who says that it's wrong? I mean, we all agree there's something not right about that. But the fact that we perceive that as a self-centered act tells us that there's something written inside of us that we know that selfishness is not right. It's sinful. But no one who stepped in front of Brenda would have looked at us and said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'm a sinful person, and I was just thinking of myself, and I wasn't thinking of other people when I did that. People don't do that. We simply go to the gibbons and we forget. We don't even recognize that we actually literally ran into Brenda's chair and spun it so that we can get to see the monkeys. We don't recognize that. And I told everybody, I said, and the worst people in the whole park were the smaller children, the children who were just learning to walk. They were oblivious. They had no idea that Brenda was even in a wheelchair or that she was even moving, or they had no idea. All they knew is the rhinos were right there, and they needed to go see the rhinos because that's exciting. And you know what? I get that. I'm like that too. I am. And yet, the question I have as I go through this whole process, and we're going to see it more and more and more, who's guilty here? The children or the adults? And the answer is all of them. We're all guilty. We are all self-centered, and the children simply prove that we're born that way. We are born sinful, and that is exactly why we need Jesus. We cannot fix this by good behavior. We need a holy, pure sacrifice who will be a substitution for our mistakes. We need an advocate who will step in between our accuser and our own cross and say, I know this one. This one is mine. I died for him. I died for her. And the result of that is a relationship of joy because you know that someone loves you that much. And that yields a fruit of righteousness. It allows us, when we're at the zoo, to notice what's happening in other people's lives, to see when children are tired and crying and say a prayer for them, to hold the door for the person behind you who's using a walker to get around, to give up your seat when someone is obviously tired or older than you, or someone who's handicapped and needs to sit down, to be aware of other human beings and what they need and value them. That's what the centurion did. He valued his servant above himself, and he knew that he didn't deserve Jesus in his home, but he invited him in. He invited him in to do his miraculous work of transformation because, quite honestly, the centurion realized that Jesus was the only hope he had. And that is true for you and for me, and I believe for the whole world.